Imagine being cast out with nothing but a torn shawl, only to return years later with an army at your back, ready to claim what was once stolen from you. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's the rise of a warrior queen who turned rejection into destiny. In the quiet, sun-soaked village of Duala, life moved slowly and stories traveled faster than the wind. It was here, among the rustling palms and red earth roads, that Jabari and Malika were raised like twins. After Jabari's father, Chief Nando, married Malika's widowed mother, Nia, the two children became inseparable. They played under the baobab trees, fetched water from the same stream, and shared the same bowl during meals. Malika, with her big, curious eyes and warm smile, was loved by everyone. She had a way of calming crying babies, healing sick birds, and even making the grumpiest elders laugh. Villagers often said, "This girl carries something special in her bones." At first, Jabari adored her. She was his shadow, his partner in mischief, his friend. But as they grew older, something began to change. Wherever they went, people praised Malika. "Look how she sings like the river," they'd say. "Have you seen how she dances? Even the wind follows her feet." Her beauty bloomed early, her mind was sharp, and her heart was kind. It didn't take long before the elders started comparing the two, always putting Malika first. Jabari tried to ignore it, but it stung every time. He was the firstborn, the chief's son, the rightful heir to Duala's legacy. Yet everywhere he turned, Malika was the one shining. Worse still, his mother, Saya, never liked Malika. She would whisper bitter things into Jabari's ears when no one was watching. "You think she's your sister? She will steal everything from you, your father's heart, your birthright, your future." At first, Jabari brushed it off, but over time, those poisonous words took root in his heart. Every compliment Malika received felt like an insult to him. Every time someone smiled at her, he felt invisible. His love slowly turned to jealousy. Still, Malika remained innocent, unaware of the storm quietly building beside her. She continued treating Jabari like a true brother, helping him with chores, defending him before elders, and sharing whatever little she had. But jealousy is a quiet fire. It doesn't burn loud, it smolders, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy. And in Jabari's heart, that fire was now alive, hungry, and growing. What started as a sweet story of two children raised as siblings in harmony was slowly twisting into something darker, something that would one day shake the entire village of Duala. As time passed in Duala, the sweet bond between Jabari and Malika began to wither like a flower with no sunlight. It didn't happen all at once. It started with whispers in the dark, soft and deadly. Jabari's mother, Saya, never accepted Malika. From the moment Nia and her daughter stepped into their home, Saya's heart filled with bitterness. To her, Malika was a threat. She feared the girl's beauty, her grace, and the way people adored her without trying. But most of all, she feared how Chief Nando, Jabari's father, had begun to treat Malika like his own blood. Late at night, when Jabari would sit near his mother's feet, she would stroke his head and plant the seeds of hate. "That girl," she'd whisper, "she's not like us. She brings bad luck. She's cursed. One day, she'll take everything from you, your father, your place, your future. You think she's your sister? No, she's a snake hiding in your house." Jabari didn't want to believe her, but the words kept digging deeper into his heart, turning love into suspicion and warmth into coldness. At the same time, strange things started happening around Malika. She would touch a wounded bird, and it would fly again. A feverish child would stop burning after Malika whispered into their ear. People began to talk, not with praise anymore, but with fear. "That girl is not normal," they'd say. "She sees things before they happen. Maybe she's a witch in disguise." When a heavy storm ruined half the village's crops, someone muttered, "It started after she touched the soil." Fear spreads fast in a village where mystery is often mistaken for danger. The same people who once adored Malika now looked at her with side eyes and crossed arms. Children were pulled away from her path, and mothers stopped asking for her help. Malika felt the shift in the air, the coldness in the greeting, the stares that burned her back, but she didn't understand why. She hadn't changed. She still helped the sick, still sang to the trees, still smiled at strangers, but the world around her had turned its back, and behind it all was Saya, quietly fueling the fire. She would whisper in people's ears, make up stories, remind them of old superstitions. "That girl is too powerful for her age. It's not natural. One day, she'll bring destruction." With each lie, Malika's image in the village began to rot, and Jabari, watching it all, started to believe the worst. The girl who once played beside him now seemed like a stranger. He forgot the laughter, the shared secrets, the sibling bond. In his eyes, Malika was no longer family. She was a danger, a threat, and the seed of hatred had fully taken root in his heart, ready to bloom into something far worse. The Festival of Unity was the most awaited day in the village of Duala. It was a time when people wore their finest clothes, painted their faces with bright colors, and danced under the sun to the beating of drums that echoed through the hills. This year, the excitement was even greater because nobles from nearby kingdoms were coming to witness the celebration. The village square was bursting with life, vendors selling roasted maize, children chasing each other, and elders sitting under palm roofs, sharing tales of old. Among the performers that day was Malika. Though many in the village had started to fear her, no one could deny her beauty and talent. When she stepped into the center of the square, silence fell. Dressed in a flowing cloth of deep blue, with beads in her hair and golden paint on her cheeks, she looked like something out of a legend. The drums began to beat, slow and steady, and Malika moved like the wind. Her arms swayed like branches, her feet kissed the earth gently, and her eyes sparkled like the morning sun. Every twist, every turn, held the crowd in a trance. Even the nobles leaned forward, whispering in awe. "Who is this girl?" one asked. "She moves like the spirits of the forest," said another. Cheers broke out. Flowers were thrown at her feet. The chief smiled with pride. For a moment, Malika forgot the cold stares and whispered fears. She felt alive, accepted, loved. But not everyone was clapping. In the corner, Jabari stood frozen, his fists clenched, jaw tight. The praise stabbed him like sharp thorns. He saw the way the people looked at her, like she was a queen. He remembered his mother's words, "She will take everything from you." And in that moment, his jealousy boiled over. He stormed into the center of the square and pointed at Malika with fury in his eyes. "This is no dance of joy," he shouted. "This is witchcraft. She's casting spells on all of you. Open your eyes. She's dangerous." The drums stopped. The cheers died. A thick silence wrapped around the crowd like fog. Malika stood there, stunned. Her smile faded. The flowers at her feet suddenly felt like stones. People began to murmur, stepping back from her. Some looked scared, others confused. The nobles exchanged uncomfortable glances. Malika's heart pounded in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Jabari continued, calling her cursed, reminding everyone of the strange things she had done, the healing, the visions, the way animals followed her. And with each word, he turned the village further against her. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a day of unity, but Jabari turned it into Malika's worst nightmare. And as she stood alone in the middle of the square, surrounded by silence and stares, the girl who once brought light to the village was now drowning in shadows. That night, while the stars blinked quietly over the village of Duala, Malika sat alone outside the hut, shivering not just from the cold, but from the sting of betrayal. The air still held the heavy silence of the festival's ending. No one had spoken to her after Jabari's public outburst. People avoided her gaze, as if afraid her eyes might curse them. She had danced with joy, but left the square with shame. Jabari sat inside, pacing like a restless lion. His mother, Saya, stood nearby, fanning the flames of anger. "You saw how they looked at her," she hissed. "The nobles, even the chief. She'll take your place if you let her stay. You must act before it's too late." A few elders had gathered too, and though not all of them believed Malika was evil, fear is a powerful thing. One by one, they agreed she should leave. "For the peace of the village," they said, "to protect the people." No one mentioned her kindness, her healing hands, or the many times she had helped them without asking for anything in return. Fear had erased all that. Just before midnight, Jabari stormed out of the hut. He found Malika sitting by the fire, her eyes red from silent tears. Without a word, he threw a ragged shawl at her feet. "You must leave," he said coldly. "You don't belong here anymore." Malika blinked slowly, her heart breaking with each word. "Jabari, I'm your sister." He looked away. "You never were." Saya watched from the shadows, satisfied. The villagers peeked from behind doors, but no one stepped forward to stop it. Malika picked up the shawl. It smelled of dust and age. She looked at the home where she had grown up, the same hut where her mother once sang lullabies, where she and Jabari used to chase fireflies, where she had felt safe. Now, even the soil beneath her feet felt foreign. Her legs shook as she stood. She took one last look at Jabari, hoping for even a flicker of regret in his eyes, but there was none. Without another word, she turned and walked into the dark forest. The trees closed around her like arms of the unknown. Every step echoed with pain, but she kept walking. The forest was thick, and the cold bit through the thin shawl. But Malika didn't stop. She whispered a vow to herself, one that only the trees and stars heard. I will not return until fate calls me back, until the truth finds light, until I rise again. And with that, the girl who was once the heart of Duala vanished into the night, leaving behind a village soaked in fear and a family torn apart by envy. Malika wandered for hours, her bare feet sore and her mind heavy with sadness. The forest was deep and silent, only the rustle of leaves and hooting owls keeping her company. She didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to get as far away from Duala as her legs could take her. Her body ached, and the cold crept deep into her bones. At some point, she collapsed by a stream, too tired to take another step. She closed her eyes, whispering one last prayer to the spirits of the forest. Then everything faded into darkness. When she opened her eyes again, the world around her was unfamiliar. Soft blankets covered her body, and the air smelled of herbs and incense. She was in a tent, but not like the ones in her village. This one had golden symbols stitched into its walls and fine rugs under her feet. Before she could sit up, the tent flap opened, and in came two tall horsemen in robes of green and gold. Behind them stood a regal woman with piercing eyes and a crown of braided bronze. She was Queen Zamera, ruler of the hidden mountain kingdom of Navala, a place most believed was only a legend. You were found near the edge of the frost cliffs, the queen said gently, half dead, but still clutching this. She held out Malika's torn shawl. Malika tried to speak, but tears came first. Queen Zamera sat beside her and took her hand. You have suffered, but you are safe now. Days turned into weeks. Malika's body healed, but it was her spirit that caught everyone's attention. She helped the healers with injured villagers, mixing herbs with a natural skill that amazed even the royal physicians. Her visions returned, sharper than ever. Warnings of sickness, dreams of far-off battle, signs of change. The court began to whisper, this girl is not ordinary. Queen Zamera took a special interest in her. She saw not just power, but wisdom. She invited Malika to sit with her during councils. At first, Malika stayed quiet, listening more than she spoke. But one day, during a debate about border security, she gently suggested a new patrol route based on a dream she had. Weeks later, that same path helped the kingdom stop an ambush before it even happened. Impressed, the queen ordered Malika to be trained not only in healing, but also in leadership and war strategy. She learned how to read ancient texts, understand maps, and even ride a horse in full armor. She trained with warriors, learned the weight of a sword, and how to speak with both kindness and authority. The girl once called cursed was now treated with honor. In Navala, Malika was no longer a shadow in someone else's home. She was becoming a light that guided others, but deep in her heart, she had not forgotten Duala, or the brother who cast her away. Years passed, and the once quiet and broken girl who stumbled into Navala had transformed into a fearless and wise woman. Malika, now known throughout the hidden kingdom as General Malika, stood tall in shining armor, her hair braided in warrior knots, and her voice steady with command. The people no longer saw her as a guest from the forest. They saw her as their protector, their champion. She led campaigns to distant borders, not with the thirst for war, but to defend the helpless and keep peace in neighboring villages. She treated the wounded herself, sat with crying children, and listened to the old. She walked among the people without guards, earning love that no sword could demand. Whenever conflict arose, she used strategy and calm thinking, not brute force. And when battle was needed, her presence alone gave her army courage. They followed her not just because she was strong, but because she made them believe they could be stronger too. Queen Zamera, now aging and wise, began to rely on Malika more than any advisor. You lead not with fear, but with heart, she once told her. That is the rarest kind of power. One evening, after returning from a long campaign, Malika visited the palace library to study the old scrolls. She had always felt a strange pull to the ancient history of Navala. There was something unfinished in her story, something still hidden in her blood. As she pored over a weathered document, her eyes froze on a name, Prince Dajani, a healer, a dreamer, a warrior banished for marrying a commoner with the gift of visions. The description sounded familiar. Her hands trembled as she searched deeper. Then, in the Queen's private archives, guarded under lock and symbol, she found the final piece, a letter written by Queen Zemera herself, long ago to her brother, Prince Djani. It spoke of sorrow and separation, of a baby girl hidden for safety after Djani's exile. That baby had been taken to a distant village to live in peace. That baby was her. Malika staggered back, her breath caught in her chest. The woman she thought she was had just vanished. She wasn't just a warrior, she was of royal blood, the rightful daughter of Navala. Her hands, once beaten and bruised in Duala, were meant to carry a kingdom's future. She confronted Queen Zemera, who stood in silence for a long time before opening her arms and saying, "I knew you would find the truth when your spirit was ready. You carry your father's strength and your mother's gift. You were never lost, just hidden until your light could shine." Tears fell from Malika's eyes, but her heart was clear. She was more than a general now. She was a legacy reborn. And soon, the world beyond Navala would learn that the girl, once cast out with nothing but a shawl, now held the power of a queen. When Malika returned to the lands near Duala, it was not as the broken girl who had once been kicked out at midnight. She rode at the front of a royal envoy from Navala, dressed in the royal colours of emerald and gold, her head held high, and her eyes calm like still waters. Behind her rode diplomats, soldiers, and healers. They came not to boast or threaten, but to offer peace, help, and unity. Her first message was sent to the elders of Duala, offering to meet, speak of peace, and help them restore harmony. But Jabari, now one of the council leaders, tore up the message without a second thought. "We do not need her pity," he said with cold pride. "She is not one of us." But the people of Duala were no longer so sure. The seasons had turned harsh. A long drought had stolen their harvests, and their once happy village now looked tired, broken, and thirsty. Wells dried up, crops failed, trade routes fell silent. The sick had no medicine, and the children's laughter had faded into silence. And in every whisper, one name returned again and again. Malika. "Didn't she heal the sick as a child?" some murmured. "Didn't she warn us of the storm that year?" others asked. "Wasn't she the girl we called cursed, who now leads armies and sits beside a queen?" Old women wept quietly, remembering how kind she had once been. Young girls dreamed of her strength. Even the men began to question the lies they had been told. Bit by bit, the story of Malika, once twisted by Jabari and his mother, began to unravel like a torn net. And the truth beneath was powerful. Still, Jabari stood firm, refusing to allow her name to be honored. But fate had already started to turn. As the skies remained dry and the earth cracked, the people began to gather near the edge of the forest, where the Navala camp had been set up. They came in silence, holding nothing but empty bowls and wounded hearts. Malika didn't turn them away. She welcomed them with food, water, medicine, and kindness. She greeted each one with gentle eyes, asking about their families, their troubles, and their hopes. And when they bowed to her, she gently lifted their heads and said, "I am still Malika. I have never forgotten you." She sent aid to Duala, even though the council rejected it. She offered solutions to fix the wells, shared seeds that could grow in dry soil, and taught new ways to heal. She asked for no praise, only that the people heal together. The girl they had once called cursed had become their blessing. Her return wasn't with anger or revenge, but with strength, mercy, and the wisdom of someone who had seen pain and still chosen love. And though Jabari still hid in pride, the winds of Duala had already changed. Malika's name now carried hope, not fear. The sun rose like fire over the hills of Duala, but this dawn was unlike any other. Drums echoed in the distance, steady, powerful, commanding. Villagers stepped out of their homes, squinting toward the forest path. What they saw made their mouths drop and their knees weaken. A golden army marched in silence, row after row of armored warriors, banners of Navala fluttering in the wind. And at the front, riding a fierce black horse, was a figure clad in shining gold armor that shimmered like the morning sun. It was Malika. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp, her golden helmet tucked under her arm, her braided hair catching the light. The same girl they had once thrown out like a stray, now returned as a royal commander, with the might of a kingdom behind her. The villagers fell to their knees, not out of fear, but out of awe and shame. Whispers ran through the crowd like wind through dry grass. She came back. She's a queen. She didn't forget us. Malika dismounted and walked through the village with quiet strength. She looked around, not with hatred, but with deep reflection. Every corner reminded her of her childhood, of laughter, pain, betrayal, but she had grown beyond it all. And now, she had returned, not to take revenge, but to bring justice, peace, and healing. Jabari watched from a distance, frozen with disbelief. He had heard the rumors but refused to believe them. And now, there she was, his stepsister, the girl he had accused, humiliated, and banished. She wasn't just alive, she was powerful, respected, loved, and he, for the first time, felt truly small. He ran to the elders, his voice trembling. "We must stop her. She's come to take over." But the elders looked at him, their eyes heavy with regret. "She brings aid, not war," one of them said softly. "She sent help when you refused it, and now the people want her." Jabari's hands shook. He had lost control. He had lost the trust of the people. And worst of all, he had lost Malika, the only person who once loved him like family. Meanwhile, Malika stood at the center of the village square. She didn't raise her voice. She simply spoke. "I have returned, not with swords to strike, but with arms to rebuild. You called me cursed, but I call you kin. I came because I still believe in this village." The people wept openly. Children ran to her. Elders bowed. Even those who once judged her now lowered their heads in shame. The girl in rags had become a symbol of hope in gold, and the boy who cast her out was now a ghost in the shadow of her rise. Malika didn't need to shout to prove her worth. Her return said it all. And from that day, Duala would never be the same again. The sun stood high above Duala as a crowd gathered in the village square, every eye fixed on the platform built just for this day. A silence, thick with tension and curiosity, blanketed the people. Children clung to their mothers, elders leaned forward, and even the birds in the trees seemed to listen. At the center stood Malika, graceful and calm in her royal robes, her eyes scanning the faces of those who once turned away from her. But there was no anger in her gaze, only strength and clarity. Beside her, Queen Zamera of Navala and a circle of noble advisors watched quietly. They had come not for war, but for truth. It was time to face what had long been buried. Jabari was brought forward, his face pale, his shoulders slumped. The once proud voice that accused Malika now trembled with shame. He stood before the people, his hands shaking, unable to meet Malika's eyes. When the queen asked him to speak, he fell to his knees. "I lied," he whispered, but the crowd demanded more. "I was jealous of her kindness, her gifts, her strength. I let my mother's hatred guide me. I called her cursed. I called her a witch. But she was never the danger. I was." Gasps rose from the crowd. Saya, Jabari's mother, stood in the shadows, her face twisted in disbelief. She tried to step forward, but the queen raised her hand. "You poisoned a village against an innocent girl," she said coldly. "You made a child believe he had no worth unless he destroyed another. You are no mother. You are no guide." With those words, the people turned away from Saya. She was stripped of her position and banished from Duala by the elders themselves. No one wept for her as she was led away, not even Jabari. But Malika, in her grace, stepped forward once more. She could have asked for punishment, for control, even for vengeance. Instead, she said, "Let this be a day of truth, not blood. I do not return to rule over you with fear. I return to heal what was broken. If the people will have me, I will serve." The villagers erupted in applause and cheers, tears streaming down many faces. Old women shouted blessings. Young girls looked at Malika with stars in their eyes. The elders stepped forward, hands raised, and declared in front of all, "From this day, Malika of Navala shall also be Malika of Duala, our leader, our daughter, our guide." And in that moment, the same place that once cast her out, now lifted her up, not just as a warrior, not just as a healer, but as the heart of a village reborn. As the dust of judgment settled and peace embraced the village once more, Malika stood tall between two worlds. Navala, the mountain kingdom that had trained her, and Duala, the village that once rejected her. With grace and wisdom, she extended her hand to both lands, not as a ruler hungry for power, but as a woman who had endured, learned, and grown into her true calling. In the weeks that followed, Malika worked day and night, bringing together the elders of both regions. She didn't speak with pride or arrogance, but with calm authority. "We are not two enemies. We are one people divided by fear and misunderstanding," she said to them. And slowly, hearts began to change. People who once feared her now sought her advice. Her old enemies now offered loyalty. The nobles of Navala, impressed by her balance of strength and compassion, formally declared her queen. And in Duala, the villagers cried tears of joy as they placed their hopes in her hands. Malika traveled between the lands, overseeing the building of new wells, schools, and homes. She invited women to sit in councils, gave voice to the poor, and taught the power of healing, not just through herbs and chants, but through truth, kindness, and justice. Children began to sing songs of her name, Queen Malika of Two Lands, the girl once called cursed, now crowned by fate itself. She did not forget her past. In fact, she used it to guide her leadership. She visited the very forest she had once run into with nothing but a ragged shawl. She stood at the edge of the river where she had cried alone and whispered, "Thank you," because even in her pain, destiny was shaping her. Jabari, now humble and changed, served in her court, not as a prince, but as a man learning redemption. And Malika forgave him, not because she forgot, but because she understood that healing begins where hate ends. Queen Zamera, proud of the woman Malika had become, took her leave and returned to the mountains, leaving the crown fully in Malika's care. "Lead with your heart," she told her, "and your people will never fall." Years passed, and under Malika's rule, the once forgotten village of Duala and the hidden kingdom of Navala became one shining empire. Traders came from far, artists sang praises, and even distant rulers sought alliances with her. And so, her story became legend, not just of a queen, but of a girl once rejected, who rose with honor and returned not to take revenge, but to build a new future. And in every home, from mountains to plains, the people remembered one truth: never despise the one you cast out. They may return wearing crowns. If you've been touched by Malika's incredible journey, remember, sometimes the people we least expect to rise are the ones who come back to change everything. Her story shows us that no matter how hard life gets, we must never lose faith in ourselves. Even when the world turns its back on you, the strength to rise again lies within. Malika turned betrayal and heartbreak into a legacy of wisdom, power, and forgiveness. She teaches us that destiny has a way of rewarding those who persevere, and that even the harshest trials are not the end, but the beginning of something greater. If Malika's story resonated with you, don't let it end here. Like this video, share it with your friends and loved ones so they too can hear this powerful message. And if you want to see more heartwarming, inspiring tales like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us, and together we can spread stories that inspire change and give hope to those who need it most. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, like Malika, you can rise, no matter the odds.